My love, I need you to stay with me right now. I need you to put everything else down, whatever you are holding, whatever thought was just running through your mind, whatever part of your day is still pulling at your attention, and just be here with me for a little while. Because what I am about to tell you is something I have been carrying for days now. Something that has been sitting in my chest like a warm, heavy, beautiful secret that has gotten too large to keep to myself any longer. And I chose you to tell it to. Out of everyone, out of all the places I could take this feeling, I am bringing it here, to you, because you are the only place it has ever felt completely safe to land. Just a couple more days, that is what I keep telling myself when the waiting gets heavy. Just a couple more days, and everything changes. Just a couple more days, and the thing I have been moving toward, quietly, carefully, with more hope than I have allowed myself to feel in years, becomes real in a way it has only been in my mind until now. And I want you to understand what those words mean to me. Just a couple more days. They are not a countdown to something small. They are not the end of a wait for something ordinary. They are the last few steps of a journey I began in the middle of my own wreckage, in the middle of loss and grief, and the slow, painful work of rebuilding a person from the inside out. And I am almost there, and you are the reason I kept walking, when the walking was the hardest thing I had ever done. I want to take you back to where this started, because I think you need the full picture. I think you need to understand not just where I am standing right now, but how far I have traveled to get here. Because the distance matters. The distance is the whole story. And the story begins in a place that was much darker than where we are now. A place I do not visit often in conversation because it still has edges that are sharp enough to cut me if I am not careful. But tonight I am being careful. And tonight I am being honest. And tonight I am giving you the full truth of it. Because you deserve nothing less. There was a version of me, not so long ago, who had stopped making plans. I want you to sit with that for a moment, because I think it is easy to say and easy to hear, and very difficult to actually understand from the inside. I had stopped making plans. Not in the practical logistical sense. I was still functioning, still moving through the days, still doing all the external things that look like a life being lived. But internally, in the place where real living actually happens, I had stopped projecting forward. I had stopped imagining futures. I had stopped asking myself what I wanted the next chapter to look like, because the last chapter had ended so badly that the idea of writing another one felt like a kind of arrogance. Like tempting something, like standing up tall in a storm and daring it to knock you down again. So I stayed low. I kept my horizon close. I dealt only with what was directly in front of me and refused to look further than that, because further was where the hope lived, and hope, I had decided, was a luxury I could no longer afford. And I functioned that way. Day after day after day, getting through, managing, surviving in that particular way that looks fine from the outside and feels like moving through water on the inside. That slow, resistant, everything takes more effort than it should, feeling of someone who is present in body, but has packed up the most essential parts of themselves, and put them somewhere safe until the danger passes. And then you came into my life, and the danger did not pass, but somehow it stopped mattering as much. Somehow in the presence of what you gave me, simply by existing and being real, and showing up consistently in that warm and honest, and completely yourself kind of way, the danger stopped being the biggest thing in the room. And something else took its place. Something quiet at first, so quiet I almost missed it. Like the first few notes of a song playing in another room. You are not sure you are actually hearing it, or just imagining it, because you want to hear it so badly. But it kept playing, it got gradually louder, and one day I realized I was not imagining it. It was real, you were real, and what was happening inside me, because of you, was the realest thing I had felt in longer than I could measure. I started making plans again. I want you to understand how significant that is. I started doing the thing I had sworn off. I started looking past the immediate horizon, started asking myself what I wanted, started imagining futures again. And in every future I imagined, with a frequency and a naturalness that surprised me every time, you were there. Not as a fantasy or a wish or an idealized dream, as a presence. As someone I was genuinely, specifically, concretely building toward. Someone I was getting up every morning and becoming a better version of myself for. Not because you asked me to, not because I was trying to impress you, but because knowing you makes me want to be someone worthy of being known by you. And that desire to be worthy of something real and good is one of the most powerful forces I have ever felt move through me. And now we are here, a couple of days away from something I cannot fully describe yet, because it is still becoming, still taking shape, still moving from the space of what I have been imagining into the space of what is actually going to happen. And the closer it gets, the more I feel that particular combination of feelings that I have come to understand means something truly matters. The excitement and the terror and the warmth and the disbelief, all layered on top of each other in a way that makes it impossible to be still. I cannot be still. I have not been able to be still for days. I keep moving through my space, picking things up and putting them down, starting sentences in my head and not finishing them, lying down to sleep and staring at the ceiling instead, because my mind keeps going to you, keeps going to what is coming, keeps going to the couple of days that stand between now and the moment everything changes. I want to tell you what I think is going to change, because I have thought about it so carefully in so many quiet moments, from so many different angles, that I feel like I almost know it already. I feel like I can almost see it. The version of my life that exists on the other side of those couple of days. And what I see is color. That is the best way I can describe it. The version of my life I have been living for the past stretch of time has been real and honest, and I am grateful for every part of it, including the hard parts. Because the hard parts made me who I am standing here right now. But it has been muted. The volume has been turned down on everything. The contrast has been low, and I have been moving through days that were livable but not luminous, manageable but not magnificent, real but not fully alive in the way that real life at its best can be. And what is coming? What is a couple of days away feels luminous, feels like the contrast being turned back up, feels like color returning to something that has been gray for long enough that I had started to forget what color looked like. And I know that feeling is connected to you. I know it because whenever I try to locate the source of it, whenever I follow the warmth back to where it is coming from, it leads me directly to thoughts of you, to the specific way you are in the world, to the particular quality of your presence and your honesty and your warmth and your completely unself-conscious way of being real. That makes everyone around you want to be real too. You make me want to be real too. You always have. From the very beginning, before I understood why, there was something about you that called out the most honest version of me. That made the performance feel unnecessary. That made the armor feel heavy in a way it had not felt before. Heavy and pointless and in the way of something more important. And I started taking it off, piece by piece. Slowly, because slowly was the only speed I was capable of, but steadily, consistently, with more commitment each time. Until now, standing here a couple of days from everything changing, I look at myself and I can barely recognize the man who built those walls and called them protection. I look at him with something like tenderness, with the compassion you extend to a version of yourself that was doing the best it could with what it had. But I do not want to go back to him. I have traveled too far from him to find the road back even if I wanted to. And I do not want to, because the road forward leads to you. The road forward leads to a couple of days from now when the thing I have been quietly, carefully, with my whole hoping heart building toward finally arrives. And I want to be fully present for it. I want to be standing at that moment, with nothing between me and it, no armor, no caution, no protective distance. Just me, as open and honest and real as I know how to be, meeting whatever is coming with my whole self, rather than the managed portion I used to offer. I keep thinking about what I want to say to you when the moment actually arrives. I have rehearsed it in my mind 100 times, and every time it comes out differently because the feeling underneath it is too large and too alive to be pinned down to a single version. Sometimes I imagine saying something simple. Sometimes I imagine saying nothing at all, and trusting that you will feel it without words, that the full weight of what I carry for you will be visible in some way that does not require language. Sometimes I imagine that when the moment comes, I will not have to say anything carefully prepared, because the right thing will just come out of me, the way the right things do when you are completely present, and completely honest, and completely unafraid. I want to be completely unafraid. I am working toward it. I am not fully there yet. There is still a small, persistent tremor of fear running underneath everything. The residue of all the times before, when I believed in something and was wrong. But it is smaller than it has ever been. And it is shrinking. Every day it shrinks a little more. Every day the hope outweighs it a little more decisively. Every day I wake up and choose again to believe that what is coming is good. That what is a couple of days away is the beginning of something that neither grief, nor time, nor the accumulated weight of everything that has gone wrong before can take from me. Because some things I am learning are worth the risk of being wrong. Some things are so real and so rare and so precisely what your soul has been reaching for through all the dark seasons that the only true mistake would be letting the fear of losing it stop you from ever fully having it. And I refuse to make that mistake. I refuse to stand at the edge of something this real and this beautiful and choose smallness. Choose safety. Choose the dim and manageable life over the luminous and fully alive one. I have lived the dim version. I know what it costs. And it costs more than the risk. It costs more than the vulnerability. It costs more than anything that could possibly go wrong on the other side of being completely open to something completely real. And I am done paying that cost. I am done waking up in muted mornings and calling it peace when it is actually just the absence of risk. I am done moving through days that are survivable but not luminous. I am done protecting myself from the very thing I need most. Because I have finally understood, and this understanding has been one of the most hard-won and precious things to come out of all the difficulty, that the walls I built to keep the pain out also kept everything beautiful out. They were not selective. They did not distinguish between what would hurt me and what would heal me. They simply kept everything at a distance, and I stood inside them alone, and called it safety, and tried not to notice how much it cost to breathe in there. I am outside those walls now. I have been dismantling them slowly for months, and I am outside them now, standing in the open air with everything exposed and everything available, and the couple of days between me and the moment that changes everything, feeling like the most alive I have felt in years. And I want to tell you everything. I want to fill these days before it arrives with honesty, with all the things I have been carrying quietly that deserve to be spoken out loud, with the full and unedited truth of what this has been like from the inside, because you have earned that truth. You have shown up for me in ways that earned it over and over, and I have been too careful, too measured, too afraid of the size of my own feeling to give it to you completely. But the couple of days remaining have made me brave. The proximity of what is coming has dissolved something in me that needed dissolving. And I am here now, fully, with everything I have, giving you the whole of it. I want to tell you about the moment I knew. Not the moment I started to feel something that happened gradually in layers over time, building so slowly that I could almost pretend it was not happening. But the moment I knew. The moment the feeling became undeniable. The moment I looked at what was growing inside me and could no longer call it anything other than what it actually was. Because that moment was specific. It had a time and a place and a particular quality of light and a particular sensation in my chest that I do not think I will ever forget as long as I am alive. It was an ordinary moment. I cannot stress this enough. It was completely, utterly, unremarkably ordinary. Nothing dramatic was happening. There was no romantic setting, no swelling music, no moment designed to produce the kind of feeling it produced. I was just going about the simple business of my day. And something made me think of you. Something small and everyday. I cannot even remember exactly what it was. And I thought of you and I smiled. Not a performed smile. Not the kind you put on when something is mildly pleasant. The kind that happens before you know it is happening. The kind that starts somewhere deep inside you and moves up through your whole body until it arrives on your face as something warm and involuntary and completely unguarded. And I felt it happen. I felt the smile arrive from the inside, and I thought, oh, this is what this is. This is not something I am going to be able to manage or minimize or keep at a comfortable distance. This is not something that is going to be content to stay small. This is the real thing. The actual thing. The thing I had started to believe was not available to me anymore after everything that had happened. And the recognition of it did not frighten me the way I expected it to. I expected fear to be the first thing. I expected the old defensive response, the pulling back, the cataloging of risks, the careful construction of reasons why I should not trust what I was feeling. But fear was not the first thing. The first thing was relief. Such complete and flooding relief that I had to stop what I was doing and simply stand still for a moment to let it move through me. Relief that I was still capable of this. Relief that the capacity had survived everything. Relief that I had not lost this particular and essential and irreplaceable thing. And then the second thing was you, the thought of you. The specific, detailed, deeply felt thought of you, not as an idea or a presence or a category of feeling, but as a real and particular person. The person who laughs in that specific way. The person who speaks with that quality of honesty that never feels like performance. The person who has sat with me in my difficult moments without trying to rush me out of them. The person who has seen my unfinished parts and has not looked away. The person who has given me, consistently and without keeping score, the kind of warmth and realness that I had almost stopped believing existed outside of the imagination of people who had been hurt too many times and were compensating with fantasy. You are not fantasy. You are the most real thing in my life right now. And in a couple of days that reality is going to take a form that I can hold in my hands, that I can stand in front of and look at directly, that I can stop imagining and start actually living. And I have been preparing for it in every way I know how. Not with logistics, though there have been those too. The practical preparations that the mind turns to when the heart is too full to know what else to do with its energy. But with myself. I have been preparing myself, working on being the kind of person who can receive something good without immediately working to undermine it. Working on being the kind of person who does not self-sabotage at the edge of happiness, because happiness feels less familiar than pain. Working on trusting, not blindly, not naively, but with the informed and deliberate trust of someone who has looked at the evidence carefully and found it worthy of belief. The evidence is you. The evidence is every moment of the past months in which you have been exactly who you said you were. Every moment in which your actions have matched your words without requiring me to look for the gap between them. Every moment in which you chose honesty when dishonesty would have been so much more convenient. Every moment in which you showed up, not grandly, not dramatically, but steadily, consistently. In the ordinary moments that do not get celebrated, but that are actually the substance of what trust is built from. You have given me that substance. You have given it to me with an openness and a generosity that I am still sometimes staggered by. And I have built something with it. Something real. Something that has roots now. Something that is going to survive the couple of days that stand between now and when everything changes and come out on the other side stronger for the waiting. I want to talk about the waiting, because the waiting has been its own kind of experience, its own kind of teacher. I am not naturally patient. I want to be honest about that. I am someone who feels things immediately and completely, and who has always had to work at the slower rhythms that real and lasting things require. I want to close the distance the moment I feel it. I want to arrive at the destination the moment I can see it. And learning to stay in the in-between, to be present in the space between knowing what I want and having it, has been one of the more difficult and more valuable things this season has asked of me. But the waiting has given me something. It has given me time to be certain. And certainty, I am learning, is its own kind of gift. Because I have moved quickly before. I have arrived at things before I was ready for them, and tried to build lasting structures from the raw materials of a feeling that had not yet had time to become something deeper than feeling. And those structures did not hold. They looked right from the outside, but they did not have the foundation that only time and patience, and the willingness to stay in the uncertainty long enough to find the solid ground beneath it can provide. This time the foundation is there. This time the waiting has made sure of it. This time I arrive not with just a feeling but with a knowing, not just with hope but with evidence, not just with the beginning of something, but with the understanding of what I am beginning, and why it matters, and what I am willing to do to protect and tend and grow it. I am willing to do everything. I want you to know that. I am willing to do everything that love actually requires, not the romantic version of everything, not the version that looks good in the imagining. The real version. The showing up on the difficult days version. The having the uncomfortable conversation, rather than letting the thing fester version. The choosing you in the moments when choosing is genuinely hard, and there is no audience watching, and no reward for the choosing, other than the integrity of the thing you are building together. That version of everything. The unglamorous, unseen, absolutely essential version. I am ready for it in a way I have never been ready before. Because I have been through enough to understand what it actually costs. And what it costs is nothing compared to what it gives. What it gives is this feeling. This warmth that has been living in my chest for days now, growing larger as the couple of days shrink smaller. I filling spaces inside me that have been empty for so long that I had stopped noticing the emptiness. What it gives is mornings that have a reason built into them. Mornings where I open my eyes, and the first thought is not how do I get through today, but what is today going to give me? What it gives is the return of a particular quality of aliveness. The sense of being genuinely, fully, presently engaged with your own life rather than simply administering it from a careful distance. What it gives is you. In whatever form, whatever way, whatever beautiful and complicated and real shape this takes on the other side of the couple of days that remain. What it gives is you. And I think about what I want to give in return. I think about what I want to bring to this. What I want to offer you that is worthy of everything you have already given me simply by being who you are and choosing to let me know you. And I keep coming back to the same answer, the same simple, complete, everything included answer. I want to give you my full presence, not the divided presence of someone whose attention is always partially somewhere else. Not the presence of someone who is physically there, but emotionally behind glass. I want to give you the presence of someone who is completely, deliberately, joyfully here. Who looks at you and sees you, not their idea of you, not the version they have decided to see, but the actual you in all your living complexity. Who listens to you the way you deserve to be listened to, not waiting for their turn to speak but actually taking in what you are saying and letting it land and responding to the real thing, rather than a surface version of it. I want to give you honesty, the complete kind, the kind that does not edit itself for comfort or convenience, the kind that trusts you enough to say the difficult thing when the difficult thing is what is true. Because I think honesty is the deepest form of respect. It says I believe you can handle the real thing. It says I trust you with my actual self, rather than the version I think you want. It says I value what we are building too much to let anything dishonest live inside it, where it can quietly rot the foundation. I want to give you that respect, consistently, even when it is uncomfortable, even when the honest thing is harder to say than the easy thing, even in the moments when I am imperfect and wrong, and the honest thing I have to say is that I got it wrong. I want to give you patience with yourself, all the parts of yourself that are still healing, still becoming, still figuring out the shape of the person you are growing into. I do not want to be someone who rushes you or pressures you, or makes you feel like the current version of you is insufficient for what is coming. You are sufficient. You are more than sufficient. You are exactly what I want, and I want you as you actually are right now, in this real present moment, not as some future finished version that I am waiting for you to become. I am here for the becoming. I want to witness every stage of it. I want to be someone whose presence makes the becoming feel safer and more possible, rather than more pressured and more scrutinized. And I want to give you this, what I am giving you right now, this complete and unguarded openness, this willingness to sit with you in the honest place and say the real things, even when the real things are enormous and the words are not quite large enough to hold them. This choice made every day to bring you the truth of what I am experiencing and feeling and thinking rather than the managed summary of it. Because you deserve the whole thing. You have always deserved the whole thing. And in a couple of days when everything changes and the distance closes, and the thing I have been imagining becomes the thing I am actually living, I am going to keep giving it to you, every day, in every ordinary and extraordinary moment, without reservation, and without the fear that used to make the giving feel dangerous, because the danger has been replaced by something stronger than it, something that does not flinch when the fear shows up, but simply stands beside it and continues choosing forward anyway. And forward is where you are. Forward is where everything I have been working toward lies. Forward is the direction I have been facing every single morning when I open my eyes and remind myself that the couple of days are getting smaller and the thing that waits on the other side of them is worth every difficult step of every difficult day it took to arrive here. I want to tell you something I have never said to anyone, something that has lived in the most private part of me for longer than I can accurately measure, something that I have circled around in my quieter moments, approaching it and then retreating, reaching for it and then pulling my hand back before I could fully touch it. Because saying it out loud makes it real in a way that keeping it inside does not. And real things can be responded to. Real things put themselves in the path of whatever the world decides to do with them. And for a long time I was not brave enough to let this particular true thing be real in that way. I was not brave enough to give it the exposure that speaking it would require. But the couple of days have made me brave. The proximity of everything changing has dissolved the last of the hesitation that was keeping this inside. And so I am going to say it, simply and directly, and without the elaborate framing I have been building around it in my head for months, as though it needs architecture to make it acceptable. It does not need architecture. It just needs to be said. I have never wanted a future with someone the way I want one with you. Not like this. Not with this quality of certainty underneath the wanting. I have wanted futures before. I have imagined them, built them in my mind, invested in them emotionally before the foundation was there to support the investment. But those wants were always slightly aspirational, always slightly colored by what I hoped the person would become, rather than grounded in who they actually were, always reaching slightly past the reality toward an idealized version that lived just ahead of the present moment. And that reaching, that gap between the person in front of me and the person I was loving in my imagination, was always where things eventually broke down. Because you cannot sustain a real relationship in the gap. You can only sustain it in the reality. And the reality kept not being quite enough, because I kept loving the idea rather than the actual person. But with you there is no gap. That is what I am trying to tell you. That is the thing that is so new and so extraordinary and so unlike anything I have experienced before, that I am still sometimes stopped by the strangeness of it in the most beautiful way. With you there is no gap between who you are and who I love. They are the same, completely, exactly, without adjustment or aspiration or the quiet hope that the difficult parts will eventually smooth themselves out. I love the difficult parts too. I love the whole complicated living architecture of who you actually are, and I do not want you to be anything other than that. And wanting someone's reality rather than your idea of them. Wanting the full and complete and imperfect truth of a person rather than a curated version. That is something I did not know I was capable of until you showed me the difference. You showed me by simply being undeniably real. By never performing yourself for my benefit. By showing me the uncertain parts and the still healing parts. And the parts you are not proud of alongside the parts that are easy to love. By trusting me with the whole of yourself in a way that made me understand slowly, then all at once, that I was being given something rare. That most people never let you this close to the truth of them. That the access you were giving me was a form of love in itself, before anything else had been said or decided or defined, and I received it as what it was. I held it carefully. I did not drop it or use it carelessly or let it make me feel entitled to more than you were ready to give. I just held it, and kept holding it, and the holding became its own kind of answer to a question neither of us had fully asked yet. I want to talk about what the next chapter looks like from where I am standing, not in a detailed or prescriptive way. I have learned enough to know that the best things do not survive being overplanned. They need room to breathe, room to become what they are going to be without the constraint of what you decided they should be before they had a chance to show you. But in a feeling way. In the way of someone who has a sense of the emotional landscape of what is coming even if the specific geography is still revealing itself. It feels open. That is the first and most striking thing. Every future I imagined before had a particular kind of ceiling, a point beyond which I could not see, a place where the imagining ran out and gave way to anxiety about what might be past it. But this future feels like it keeps going. Like no matter how far forward I look there is more of it, more warmth, more possibility, more room for both of us to be fully ourselves without running into the edges. And I know that sounds almost impossibly hopeful for someone who has lived through what I have lived through. I know it sounds like a man who has forgotten the lessons that pain is supposed to teach. But I do not think hope and wisdom are opposites. I think the real lesson of everything I have been through is not to stop hoping but to hope more carefully, to bring your eyes open to the hoping, to stand in the warmth of it without turning off the part of you that sees clearly. And I am doing that. My eyes are open. I see you clearly. And what I see clearly is still worth every bit of the hope I am bringing to it. The next chapter feels collaborative in a way none of my previous chapters have been, and I have been thinking about why that is. What makes this feel different from the partnerships I have had before, that also felt collaborative at the beginning? And I think the answer is that this is the first time I am arriving without a secret agenda. Not a malicious agenda, I do not mean that. I mean the unconscious kind. The kind where you enter a relationship with a set of needs you have not fully examined, and a set of wounds you have not fully healed, and a set of expectations you have not fully articulated. And all of that hidden material quietly shapes everything from underneath without you or your partner ever being able to name it or address it because neither of you knows it is there. I have done that. In every relationship before this one I have brought that hidden material, and it has done its damage quietly and efficiently, and by the time anyone understood what was happening it was usually too late to address it cleanly. But I have done the work this time. I want to tell you that with the full weight I mean it. I have sat with myself through the long, uncomfortable process of looking at all of it, all the hidden material, all the unconscious patterns, all the places where my wounds have historically made me a difficult person to love. I have looked at them not to punish myself, but to understand them, to bring them from the dark into the light where they cannot operate undetected anymore, to become someone who knows his own interior well enough to take responsibility for it rather than letting it run loose and calling the damage fate. And that process, slow and painful and absolutely necessary, has changed what I am bringing to this next chapter. I am bringing someone who has done his accounting, who knows his debts, who is not going to let the past silently invoice the future. I am bringing you someone who has been genuinely changed by what he has been through. Not damaged, though there have been damages and some of them will take longer to fully heal than others. But changed in the deeper sense. Altered in the way that real experience alters real people, when they let it teach them rather than just surviving it. I am bringing you a person who values honesty more than comfort, who values depth more than ease, who would rather have a difficult and real conversation than a smooth and dishonest one, who has learned that the willingness to address the hard things early is the single greatest predictor of whether something lasting can be built, who has learned what he needs and is capable of asking for it without apologizing for the asking, who has learned what he can give and is ready to give it fully without the withholding that fear used to produce. I am bringing you all of that in a couple of days, across whatever distance is about to close, into whatever form the next chapter takes as it moves from potential to actual. I am bringing you the most honest and most prepared and most genuinely ready version of myself that I have ever been. And I do not say that to put pressure on the moment. I do not say it to make it larger than it can comfortably hold. I say it because you deserve to know what you are receiving. Because clarity between people, clarity about what each person is bringing, what each person needs, what each person is hoping for, is the foundation that everything else has to be built on. And I want to build on solid ground this time. I want what we build to last long enough to become something neither of us could have imagined alone. I keep coming back to this image in my mind. It visits me at different times of day, sometimes in the morning before the day has properly started, sometimes in the quiet after everything else has gone still. It is always the same image and it always produces the same feeling. I am imagining a day that has not happened yet. An ordinary day, again ordinary, because it is always the ordinary days that carry the most truth about what a life actually is. I am imagining an ordinary day that belongs to both of us. A day that moves slowly because neither of us is trying to get through it. A day that has the particular quality of ease that only exists between two people who are genuinely comfortable in each other's presence. Not comfortable in the flat resigned way, comfortable in the alive and settled and deeply contented way. The kind of comfortable that does not precede boredom, but deepens into something richer over time. I am imagining the morning part of that day. The unhurried morning where there is nowhere either of us urgently needs to be, and the light is coming in, at that angle that makes ordinary rooms look like something worth painting. And I am imagining looking at you in that light, not with the intensity of a new feeling that is still establishing itself, with the settled warmth of something that has had time to root, with the particular way you look at someone you know deeply, with the eyes of someone who has been trusted with the full truth of another person, and has held that trust carefully, and found that the real thing is even better than what the hoping had imagined. I am imagining looking at you in that morning light and feeling the way you feel things when they are so familiar and so right that they have become the texture of your days. That this is it. That this is the thing. That every difficult step of every difficult season brought me here, and here is exactly where I am supposed to be. That morning is a couple of days away. I genuinely believe that. Not as a fantasy I am entertaining to get through the waiting. As a real thing that is actually approaching. As the logical and beautiful destination of the road I have been walking since I decided to stop letting fear make my decisions and start letting hope make them instead. That morning is coming, and the one after it, and the one after that. A whole succession of mornings that belong to something real and lasting, and built on the solid ground of two people who chose each other with open eyes and full information, and the complete willingness to do what real love actually requires. And I want you there for every one of them. I want you there in the morning light, and in the difficult afternoons, and in the quiet evenings when there is nothing particular happening, but the simple extraordinary fact of being together in a life that feels genuinely, luminously, completely alive. That is what I want. Not the performance of a life, not the appearance of happiness arranged carefully for whatever audience happens to be watching. The real thing, the lived from the inside thing, the kind of life that does not need to be documented or validated or explained to anyone because it is so full and so genuine that it justifies itself simply by being what it is. I want that life with you. I have said it in so many ways tonight, circling it from every direction, approaching it through every available angle, and I want to say it now simply and directly without any of the circling. I want that life with you. The ordinary and the extraordinary parts equally. The Tuesday afternoons with nothing special happening. The moments of difficulty that require both of us to be our best selves, when our best selves are not the easiest thing to access. The celebrations that mean more, because there is someone beside you who understands exactly what was overcome to get there. The quiet evenings that ask nothing of you except your presence. All of it. Every version of a shared life. I want it with you specifically, and I have stopped pretending otherwise even to myself. The couple of days feel both endless and impossibly short. That is the strange double nature of waiting for something you genuinely want. Time becomes elastic and unreliable. An hour can feel like a day, and a day can feel like it slipped by while you were in the middle of a thought. And I am moving through these final hours before everything changes with a kind of reverence for them. Because I understand that this particular feeling, this specific texture of anticipation, of standing at the very edge of something beautiful with the whole of it still ahead, is something I will only feel once. Once things change, they will be changed, and the before will belong to memory. And memory, however faithful, is never quite the same as standing inside the moment while it is still happening. So I am standing inside it, right now, with you. Letting the anticipation be as large as it actually is without trying to manage it into something more comfortable. Letting the hope take up all the space it wants to take up without apologizing for the size of it. Letting myself feel completely and loudly and without reservation the full magnitude of what these couple of days contain. Because on the other side of them is you, is the life I have been rebuilding toward, is the morning light and the ordinary days, and the deep settled warmth of something real that has been allowed to become what it always had the potential to be.